Good morning, everybody. I'm Peggy Lee Clark. I'm the Executive Director of Pottstown Area Industrial Development, otherwise known as PAID, is what you will hear people refer to it as. So my entity is a 501c3. I am not like the gentlemen on the panel who all represent various forms of government entities, but we do work very closely. PAID was reorganized in 2010. It's been around since 1965. The MOU in 2010 was really a collaboration between the School District of Pottstown, the Borough of Pottstown, and the redevelopment of Montgomery County, Redevelopment Authority of Montgomery County. The two you probably know are the School District and the Borough. Redevelopment Authority, which I neglected to say, has been a great partner because we, this might be a shock to some of you, have a lot of remediation issues with brownfields in Pottstown. And they have made significant investments, millions, right here in Pottstown. So it's a really important piece to the collaboration that goes on in development here. Things that we have been working on that have been top of mind. One of the things that I hear about consistently, and PAID is here to facilitate conversations, is the complexities of getting through development and L&I. So through work with the L&I staff, borough staff, and myself, as well as the third-party reviewer, which is the engineer for the borough, we have put together, if you are interested or if you are developing a commercial property, a one-page cheat sheet to really give you some guidance about what you can expect. And I think that it's something that people have been clamoring for. We are consistently trying to simplify things. These buildings are not easy. They have been badly abused over the years. A lot of them have old components in them, and some of the things that we cannot sway on, that the rules are frustrating, are life safety issues. So I do want to put that out there. That's one of the things that, and I think that everybody wants to see development here. We just have to continue to work. Two high priority things I'm working on: getting Keystone Boulevard, getting some commitment from funding sources to be able to build Keystone Boulevard and connect it to the 422 interchange. That's imperative for the development of that area down along the river. And the second thing is a life sciences incubator hub, which will have wet lab and informatics infrastructure for informatics for research and development. Third and fourth floor of the BB&T building, otherwise known as where April's building is, on the corner of Hanover and High. We do have money, thanks to the state. Senator Mensch and our representatives were extremely helpful in gaining that money to start design and engineering work from DCED. So that's my spiel. I hope it was 2 minutes.
It was 3 minutes, but
Oh, sorry.
Darn it, Peggy.
Sorry.
All right, my name is Richard Bradbury. I am the second boring half of a Law and Order episode. I'm the Assistant District Attorney here in Montgomery County. I'm the head of the Community Prosecution Unit here in Pottstown Borough. In 2016, District Attorney Steele put 3 of us prosecutors up here in the borough to handle everything that comes out of the borough and to work with the police department. Our unit focuses on 3 things in particular. The first is vertical prosecution, working with Chief Markovich and his detectives for investigation and carrying the case all the way to verdict. So if you are a victim of a crime or witness to a crime in Pottstown, you're dealing with me and my team from start to finish. Second is working with the community, getting to know the community. So for example, my team will be out picking up trash tomorrow at the Rock the Block community cleanup. We also attend meetings like this and otherwise try to get to know the people that we're working to protect and get to know who is not a problem in the community and what things are happening that we can support and back up as much as possible. And the third angle of what we handle is to identify the people who are causing problems in Pottstown and devote the appropriate resources to identifying and then fixing that problem. I don't think it's a great shock that in Pottstown, like in most communities, a very small number of people are responsible for a very large perceived problem. And so where possible, we're trying to nip that in the bud and address those individuals in a more customized, tailored approach than they would otherwise get. And the big takeaway from our work is that we are here not because Pottstown is a problem, but because Pottstown has potential. And we're going to do everything that we can to support that. Alan spoke about that upstairs. during his keynote about basic services like public safety being the bedrock that Pottstown and communities like it can build upon, and we're here to provide that as much as humanly possible.
Thank you. That was
Good job.
Thank you. Good. I'll catch us up on time. My name's Mick Markovich. I'm the Chief of Police here in Pottstown. I've been the chief for about 9 months now. I've been working in Pottstown for about 24 years, just over 20 of that with the police department. Aside from investigating crimes, we've partnered with Art Fusion, and we're trying to create a program called Create with a Cop, where it brings kids and cops together to work on projects, programs, even if it's just playing chess or video games, whatever could be planned. Grumpy's Restaurant has jumped on board with us to offer a culinary aspect of it, I guess, but it's a program that we're really hoping kicks off just to get some cops and kids together to change the perceptions that we have. Thank you.
43 seconds.
Yeah.
You're good.
More time for questions.
Okay, good morning. My name is Dan Weand. I'm the president of the Borough Council. I am in my third term right now. And a few years ago, when I took over as president, I asked each of the councilors to make a challenge or some goal for the year. I thought I was risking myself. I asked that we bring in 100 new jobs for the year. At the end of that season, about 13 months later, we got a report back from Perkheimer at that time. They collect our taxes, saying that our employment increased by over 1,000 in that 1 year, and we haven't stopped the momentum since. Internally, being president, I get to appoint committees, create and appoint members, and recently I did create a methods committee, which is near and dear to me. I spent most of my life in industrial and process engineering. We started with the L&I department. We're looking at how they do what they do. And Peggy mentioned earlier, we now have a one-page sheet for commercial development. When we started this, investigating into that, I think it took 7 sheets of paper to fill out all the questions and information that the borough needed for you to move forward. No longer. One sheet gets you started. The other thing we're looking at internally is our computer software. And we found out that not all of the modules talk to each other. So sometimes data is entered in L&I, finance doesn't know about it, or vice versa, and that the staff is working on that right now to make that all more smooth, more efficient. The second prong to this method's goal is how can Pottstown be more friendly? I mean, I've known for years that we're sitting on a gold mine with all kinds of resources and assets just needing to be developed and polished. So we're going through L&I and codes and asking them to ask the people they deal with, how could our service had been better? You tell me where we have to clean off the edge, where we have to smooth it out a little bit. And as we gain more and more input from the public who use our services, my goal is to have us the easiest municipality to deal with. Looking forward, last night I had the privilege and the honor of meeting with Joe Cerisi. He had a presentation with from an outside group about a trackless tram. Call it a trolley, call it whatever you like. It's a means of taking hundreds of cars off of 422 if you commute east every morning. And I was there with a fellow council person, and together we committed the borough to offer ourselves as the first pilot for a program like this in the area. That way, I don't have to drive down 422 to meet my friend Ken. I can just get on the tram and sit back and relax for the next half hour. With that, I'll turn it over if I'm in time.
Okay, I'm Ken Lawrence. I'm Vice Chair of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. I'm one of the 3 commissioners that represent all of Montgomery County, the 3rd largest county in the Commonwealth, and we have 62 municipalities in Montgomery County. Pottstown is our western gateway, and I don't always speak for all my colleagues, but I'll speak for them that we're all bullish on Pottstown and what's happening here. And we'll continue to invest the carousel, the railroad, and then Peggy will give us tours of all the great businesses that are moving in here to Pottstown. So, that's the reason why I'm here today. But also, what you find in Pottstown that maybe you don't find in some other municipalities are the partners here. And you see many of the partners here at the table here. Hobart's Run is running this today. But the school district, the Health and Wellness Foundation, here in Pottstown, and I get to go across the county, you have groups here that I don't know that we all agree all the time, but I think we all agree on moving Pottstown forward and continuing Pottstown's progress. From the county level, one of the things that we're working on across the county is our infrastructure and improving our roads and bridges. And I talked about that earlier. We have 133 bridges in Montgomery County. In 2012, 62 of those were structurally deficient in some way, meaning they were weight restricted or they were closed. We've completed 35 of those projects so far, and we have 20 more projects underway. I understand if you live near a bridge that's one of the 20 that's underway, that can be very frustrating. No one knows who owns a bridge until they can't drive across it. And then they figure out who owns that and they begin to call them. But we're committed to making sure that our 75 miles of roads, our 133 bridges are in good working condition so you can get back and forth to work or wherever you need to go. And then also continue to work on the expansion of our trail network, which we have 90 miles, and it's the envy of southeastern PA. So I was timing myself. I had 2:01 there.
You're good.
Good morning. My name is Tim Hennessy. I serve in the House of Representatives in Harrisburg, and I chair the House Committee on Transportation. I think I made a mistake in talking about some of the litigation and some of the new things that are happening in terms of transportation in Harrisburg, so I'll skip that and say that in a relative sense, Pottstown's new to my district, even though I was born and raised right across the river in northern Chester County in North Coventry. Before, I used to have Coatesville in my district, and we used to take a lot of time trying to raise money, find funds available from various programs in Harrisburg, trying to help the city rejuvenate itself, revitalize itself. Recently, we've been trying to do that same kind of thing here in Pottstown. Even though as an example, the Steel River Playhouse right up on High Street, that was the old, I think, the old Newberry's building, and frankly, when you went through it, it looked like it really was a candidate for the wrecking ball. But people with vision, and I will confess that I was not one of those people that saw what it could turn into being. They saw it. They came to us. I was able to approach the Rendell administration, and we ultimately found like $500,000, maybe it was a little bit more than that, to help spur the revitalization of that building, renovation. And we just celebrated the 10th anniversary. Joe will tell you, he's in community theater himself. My daughter is. She was in the first play that was done in the Steel River Playhouse after it was renovated. That was 10 years ago. They just reprised that Miracle on 34th Street a couple of months ago. And it was a kick for me. I go there a lot, but it was a kick for me to see that happen and to know that we were able to get that kind of money to kickstart that remodeling. More recently, in the last couple of years, we've gotten, working with Senator Mensch, he was able to locate a $1 million grant, I think last year, wasn't it $1 million for the school district of Pottstown? Because that helped to offset some of the blow that was sustained by the school district when the Pottstown Hospital went from community health system, a for-profit corporation that was paying about $975,000 a year, into the Pottstown School District. We sold to Tower Health at the stroke of a pen in a corporate boardroom somewhere. But it became nonprofit, and the school district lost that $975,000. So Bob was able to locate a program that was available in the Senate. We worked together on that and brought that money to the school district. That helped last year. We've still got to try to find a solution this year, and Joe Cerisi and I have talked about ways that we can do that. We've also been able to work with the Colebrookdale Railroad in terms of just getting a very sizable grant from DC through DCED for the train station that'll be near Memorial Park, just on the border of Memorial Park and Pottstown, and would be within walking distance of the carousel. And over the course of the last couple of years, we've been able to get a lot of money from the state for the carousel, which is, if you haven't been there, stopped by to see it. It's a beautiful recreation of an old-time carousel. George, how old is it? 80 years old, I think?
1905.
1905.
1905.
Okay, so it's even older than that. So anyway, and by the way,
When that thing started.
next Saturday, if you want to stop by, my grandson's birthday party, we're going to hold it there at the carousel. It's very reasonable to rent, and it's a great place for kids because they can ride the carousel to their heart's content. I've only represented the city or the borough of Pottstown for the last 3 years, I think it is, or 4. But again, our focus is trying to find available programs and available monies in Harrisburg. We've not had a lot of money in Harrisburg in recent years because of the fact that the economy nationally and at the state level has been sort of languishing. But hopefully things are coming back if we can get the national economy to run at full tilt. A rising tide floats everybody's boat, and we'll have more money, and we'll be able to do even better things for the city, or the borough of Pottstown. With that, I'll turn it over to my new partner in the House of Representatives, Joe Cerisi. Joe?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
As Tim alluded to, I'm Joe Cerisi. I represent the other part of Pottstown, the 146th. The one thing that I'm going to give Tim a plug, his grandson was in the 10th anniversary as the baby in Miracle on 34th Street. So he wasn't in the first time, but he was in this time with the daughters. That was
And I'm
great.
perfectly willing to share any photos of my grandson.
But having talked about a Steel River Theater, I grew up in a state north of here, and you could guess where that may have been. And I grew up in a small town that was similar to Pottstown. And when I first came here, I saw what I grew up in, a community that was thriving over 200 years. It's called Northport, and it sits on one of the bays on Long Island. In Northport has theater, it has restaurants, walking paths, had an old trolley that ran down the street for years, but a thriving community. And I was part of the Steel River movement that came here to High Street as I performed there and looked at this area and said, wow, this is like at home. And when I'm a new legislator, only 4 months in, but when looking to run for this area, the 146th, and looking at Pottstown, Royersford is the other area that's similar to this, saying these areas could be just as alive. This is a jewel that sits here. And one of the big initiatives that we speak about, and thank you, Dan, for bringing it up, was the conversation we had last night on public transportation. And I see that as one of the biggest deterrents to our community of why we can't bring it back to life is public transportation. Because when you have public transportation, you have people who come in and out. You will be able to raise the investment, the homes. The Long Island Railroad did it when they brought it to Long Island. Where it starts to put the investment in, the school taxes start to come down because now industry comes in. We have a great school district here in Pottstown that's thriving and working hard. And John Amato, who was here a little while ago, who I don't know if John's still in the room.
Taking a picture.
There he is. Oh, he's taking a picture. That's John Amato.
Behind the camera.
Yeah, right. He's been the face of the Pottstown School District for how many years, John? A little over 40? 49. He's only 50. But a great advocate for what happens and the great things here in Pottstown. So I look forward to working with my colleague in the House, Tim, and with my colleague in the Senate, Bob, of course our county with Ken and Dan and everyone's out here to bring Pottstown to where it should be.
Thank you. I'm Bob Mensch. I'm a state senator, and I had 35 years in business, and most of that time was with a company called AT&T, and as I moved through my career, I had many opportunities. One of those was teaching graduate school finance for 3 years. So I bring those experiences to the legislature. And my primary focuses in the legislature are economic development, and one of the programs I'm working on now is to incent new capital investment in projects starting at $1 million. One of the companies that helped me appreciate the need was a company here in Pottstown called Specialty Plastics. So as we have evolved our thinking, we have begun to work with many of the great, successful, family-owned businesses here in Pennsylvania, more specifically in Pottstown in the southeast, help us foment our thinking as we have tried to move forward and try to figure out how do we grow the economy again in Pennsylvania. Tim Hennessy said, rising tide lifts all boats. That truly is my philosophy, and that's what has to happen with the Pennsylvania economy so that we can generate more tax revenue, do the things that we need to do without taxing everybody more. You know, all we need is more money into the economy. And there's been mentioned several times with the school district, what Steve Rodriguez has brought to our attention, the real operational disadvantage for a school district such as Pottstown that is terribly hurt by the existing funding formula in Pennsylvania, more specifically because of something called hold harmless. Won't go into that discussion now. But suffice to say, we are working, Tim's working on a bill in the House, I'm working on a bill in the Senate, trying to accommodate the needs of some school districts and not take away all the hold harmless, but at the same time begin to take away the pain from Pottstown. And we truly do appreciate the difficulty that Pottstown is in. Last year, Tim said that last year we got $1 million into the budget. When we sat down with the school district and the administration, we're pretty sure that we had an agreement that it would be an ongoing, a recurring $1 million. The budget secretary ultimately didn't see it that way, and so it was a one-time, but we're revisiting it now with the administration, and we're hopeful that perhaps, never want to overpromise, but we're really trying hard to make sure that it becomes a recurring amount, which has a certain escalation factor in it for considering the economic impact on a dollar, but also understanding student enrollment and trying to do something that is fair for the school district and fair for the taxpayers. So thank you. Great to be here. Look forward to your questions.
Thanks, everyone. So we'll take questions, but I just want to say first that I appreciate so much all of your camaraderie and just, I don't know if you all feel it, and if folks are visiting Pottstown kind of for the first time or in this group, you can just see this commitment to work together and make Pottstown grow and just be the place we all want it to be, and especially across party lines. Like it's very encouraging to see you all here and so engaged. Thank you. So yeah, let's take questions, and I know everyone's getting hungry, but I think we'll do another 10 or 15 minutes of down here, and then we'll start with whoever raises their hand first.
Okay, the public transportation, I've heard mention of, is it a light rail, or you said trolley, or?
Trackless trolley.
Trackless trolley.
You talked about.
So what I tried to bring last night was to say, look, we have for years tried to look to restore the commuter rail that once ran here in the 80s. And Norfolk Southern owns the lines. It's a freight line now. So it's difficult to work with freight and passenger service when they'd have to give up some of their time to put the passenger line on. Now, it's not impossible, because it not only happens in other parts of our nation, but in other parts of the world. So we tried to do a think box and say, how do we go beyond this? There's got to be another solution. And through some research, we found a gentleman, he was just here a little while ago, and they're walking around campus, that was a light rail, a heavy rail person for years. He's a professor at a university in Australia. He's worked throughout the United States and the world to look at this transportation issue, and he's an environmental person. So the two of those blend together, urban revitalization. And he had visited a place in China that was starting something called a trackless tram. It doesn't need rails, that works optically from satellite and sensors in the road, that can run on macadam, so it can run right on the asphalt. That's very little investment, and that was the presentation that he gave last night. Now, I made it clear to everyone that was there last night is I'm not endorsing this. I'm not saying we're moving in this way, but I want to put it out here as an option for us to say, oh, we have no options. Well, we do have options. How it would work, how it would be implemented, we need to do a study on. So we're trying to go for a grant right now to do a comprehensive study to see if this would be one of those options. But it could be the solution that we are looking for to eliminate the traffic problem that we have. I hope I answered that. I know it took the long road. No, sorry.
Do you think you could talk with the chairman of the Transportation Committee to see if he'd help?
I'm going to reach out to the chairman of the Transportation Committee.
They're going to Atlantic City this year to see the tram, the boardwalk.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to study it.
watch the tram, please.
Watch the tram.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
So, my name is Keith Costello, and thank you guys all for your time today. Staying on the topic of transportation, I'll ask you, Commissioner Lawrence. I live also in North Coventry, and I have people asking me all the time because I'm heavily invested in Pottstown. When is the Coventry Street Bridge opening? So sorry to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to.
So we have a website, and no, seriously, and you can go to the website and click on all of our bridges, but click specifically on the Kime Street and see. I don't know I probably should have looked before I came here because I probably should have anticipated that someone was going to.
Sadly, I think the target is 2021.
2020.
2020. Yeah. And that's a bridge that actually, it's Chester County and us, so which makes it, as I said earlier today, fixing a bridge isn't like paving your driveway, and it's a arduous process. And trust me, my people get tired of me here and say, why can't we just fix this? Why can't we just go? But so
2020.
2020.
Now, I wouldn't say you'd be driving across it by then, but the design studies have been done and all that's in, so we're told from very reliable sources through county planning that it's scheduled for a significant completion in 2020.
a lot of the requirements for the bridges come from the federal government and the state government because we get reimbursed for them as well. So it's a long regulatory process to go through the design process for.
And my question was more on the positive side because I'm starting to see a lot more traffic going into Pottstown, which is great on Hanover Street. So it'd be wonderful to have that other additional avenue into town. So
I want all our bridges open, all of them.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I think Senator Rafferty, before he was in office, he was a champion of getting it done. I've met, I don't know how many times in terms of trying to spur it along. It's been, sometimes you wonder, what is it, 475-foot bridge, why it takes years and years and years to go through planning. Just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but there are federal requirements. If we use federal money, you have to meet federal requirements, the EPA. We're being recorded, right? It seems to me the EPA just makes it much more difficult than it has to be. I mean, you can't possibly not, not offend some environmentalists somewhere or some concern when you need to get people, people in North Coventry. Luckily now, when it was even worse 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, when the ramp from onto 422 that was closed. And you couldn't get to the hospital from North Coventry or East Coventry until you went up 100 or across Hanover Street. I mean, it was a health safety issue, a life and death situation, and yet EPA and the people that deal with that through DEP don't seem to want to budge in terms of their timing process. So it's been very frustrating for all of us. I know Bob's been trying to help out. Joe's, certainly gotten the ear of people up in Harrisburg, but I really think at this point it's the Montgomery County Planning Commission who really has the ball in their court, and hopefully I'm glad to hear your.
Yeah, and I think it's frustrating when people don't see any work being done, right? So you just think that nothing's happening, things are happening, but it's not things that you can say. It's paperwork and designs and plans that are going back and forth between the EPA and.
There's progress. Sounds like it's moving stuff. All right, another question? George, go.
Tim, I'm so glad to hear that you're chairman of the Transportation Committee. Years ago, my first love was to bring the carousel in the center of Pottstown because I've always wanted to see downtown Pottstown survive. I always had ideas on how we might get together. Well, I'm on the board of directors of the Colbrook-Dale Tourist Railroad. We have a trolley, and it's a same gauge trolley that fits on our track. There's a group being formed right now that wants to help us bring the trolley down right near Potts Grove Mansion, turn to the left, and come down a little station that we would build at the carousel. Consequently, we would like to take that trolley downtown on High Street. Only maybe to Hanover and High at one point, and maybe continue on to the Pottstown Hospital if it's a success. But there's a group being formed right now, so we're going to be in touch with you.
Well, we meet regularly. I know Bob has been, he probably has Nathaniel Guest on speed dial, so do I. Yep. Nathaniel calls to us for help, and last Tuesday, I guess, I was out taking pictures with Dave Maloney, from our counterpart from Berks County, with Nathaniel of some of the bridges that support the trackage for the Colebrookdale Railroad. And there's some concerns about those, and we're trying to get those fixed as well.